I'd like to say pleasant good afternoon to all the members of the media here with me today. My presence here this afternoon is to deliver on my government's commitment to communicate about how my government is moving strategically forward with both short-term and long-term solutions to ensure the sustainability of these Virgin Islands. This afternoon I will speak about my recent trip to Hong Kong and the opening of BVI House Asia in an economic context, my visit to Gibraltar ahead of the Joint Ministerial Council meeting. I'll also speak about my government's strategies for reversing the French government's decision to have us listed as a non-cooperative territory, and my government's unwavering commitment to the continued development of a reputable financial services brand so that we may retain the jurisdiction of choice. I'll begin with the first, my trip to the Asia-Pacific region. I'm sure that you, the members of the media and the wider BVI community, would agree that there has been extensive coverage of my visit to Hong Kong and the official opening of BVI House Asia, for which I am most thankful. I want to take a few minutes to discuss this milestone accomplishment for our territory and what it means for the future economic growth of our beloved BVI. By any measure, the Asia-Pacific region represents the future. From its vibrancy, economic strength, population size, the expansion of wealth, the continued growth of the middle class to the size and strength of its global market for consumer goods. Be they manufactured goods, financial services, or tourism, Asia represents economic opportunity. It is for this reason where you have, for example, the great United States of America, who itself announced its pivot to Asia strategy last year. A small service-based economy such as the Virgin Islands, we are all beaten apart to Asia, and with good reason, future economic growth. As your leader, I am particularly pleased that my government has taken this significant step to establish a formal presence in Asia, with BVI Asia House located in the very heart of Asia in Hong Kong. I am pleased that my government sees that office as an indispensable component to the future growth of our financial services from Asia. We look forward to building on our sterling reputation in the area and to deepening and broadening our product offerings in the key area of financial services. And to go further, we intend to expand our presence in the near term to include our tourism product, for which I am confident there is a ready market. Beyond these two key areas of service, Asia holds considerable investment potential for the BVI in the areas of tourism and real estate development. This was confirmed from my various discussions with current investors and those doing already business with the BVI. For the BVI, ladies and gentlemen, Asia represents future growth of the economy and opportunity for our people for many years to come. BVI Asia House is about positioning the BVI to take advantage of the opportunity. BVI Asia House is about staying ahead of the curve, and I am pleased that we have taken this step. Turning to my recent trip to Gibraltar, I previously reported that I joined leaders from the other UK overseas territories in a planning meeting for the upcoming Joint Ministerial Council with the United Kingdom in November 2013. I also kept you informed of our progress while there. As you're aware, the GMC is a grouping comprised of political leaders of overseas territories and members of the United Kingdom government, to which the OTs and the UK work together to further the agreed partnership and priorities. For example, the territories and the United Kingdom have agreed some broad areas of partnership and priority. Among others, we have agreed to work together to support economic growth and jobs, to protect the environment, to ensure better governance and deliver better education in stronger, healthier, and safer communities. Our meeting in Gibraltar was aimed at furthering discussion on subject matters relevant to some of these priority areas. This has been done with a view not only to share collective experiences, but also to come to common positions that we could put to the United Kingdom government during the JMC meeting and further discuss how the United Kingdom could support our agenda. For example, we spoke at length about investments in economic diversification, which we believe will ultimately impact economic growth and jobs. We learned that many territories in fact pursuing investments through hotel infrastructure development and expanding airports and cruise ports. In this respect, it is clear that similar key investment initiatives that are being pursued by my government are in fact consistent with other territories' plans for investments. As I've previously stated, my government is building a territory for long-term sustainability. We have to pursue policies and plans that will do this. Therefore, we have to grow our key business areas, which will in turn ultimately grow our economy. In order to do so, we have to, among other things, develop the infrastructure that will facilitate access to our territory. Similar at the meeting, we discussed the current financial services environment and how we could mutually support each other, as well as what support the United Kingdom can give in this area. Employment, education, governance, health, and the environment are some of the areas on which we expect to have further discussions with the United Kingdom and how they could support us. Interestingly and incidentally, on the heels of those discussions, Prime Minister Cameron gave the BVI and other OTs and CDs an important endorsement in stating that we could no longer be considered as tax havens. I knew this all along, and my government believed this all along. We are pleased that you, the people of these Virgin Islands, believed in our unwavering commitment and strategic ability to prove others wrong. When misinformation was first spread about the financial services brand, I was concerned because the saying is true. It takes years to build an exceptional reputation and 1 second to break it down. But what is important for you to know is that as your leader, I did not waver in my commitment to building a better Virgin Islands. As the obstacles came, and you knew they did, I worked with a team who worked hard, putting country first. You have read from press releases and other sources about recent statements by Prime Minister Cameron, where he stated that overseas territories and crown dependencies operate fair and open tax systems, and recognized that we have agreed to take the necessary action on tax exchange, information exchange agreements, and beneficial ownership. I want to take a moment to explain to you why this is such a profound statement. I have personally and tirelessly worked over the past few months for the BVI to get such recognition, even in the face of ill-informed criticisms right here at home. Why is this profound? Well, simply because recognition at that level that BVI should not be considered a tax haven shifts any conversation about BVI financial services into a more positive light. And this will go a long way towards changing the global dialogue on how BVI has been unduly and unfairly perceived. Ultimately, it boosts our reputation as a jurisdiction with high standards of transparency and accountability, a reputation that we have built steadily over time. And in this industry, one of your greatest assets is reputation, as indeed reputation is the key driver of financial services business, which is so fundamentally important to economic growth and prosperity. You will recall that over the past several months, BVI has agreed to various information sharing initiatives, some of which have come under strong attacks at home. We have always shared information. We are now committed to do more in different ways, and so have every other overseas territory and many other jurisdictions around the world. In the end, reputation is won or lost and how we fight the battle, and ours has been solidified because we have forged ahead with prudence and balance to agree the initiatives that we believe are important for the long-term sustainability of our financial services industry. This is consistent with my government's pledge to safeguard the reputation of the BVI and build this industry and our country for the long term. I have personally led the charge for a joined-up approach by the overseas territories so that we could have a collective voice on the application of some of these initiatives. Recognizing that the global standards and debate have changed, I will continue to try and achieve the best results for a territory by being firm but balanced, but most importantly, prudent in my decision-making. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, you have by now been aware of the actions of France, where they published a list of non-cooperative states and territories that indicated they consider the BVI, among other countries, as non-cooperative jurisdiction in the exchange of information for tax purposes. As most of you would know, the BVI has signed a tax information exchange agreement with France since 2009. The treaty came into effect in 2010 as per the provisions of the treaty. In 2011, the French Competent Authority began sending requests to the British Virgin Islands, and official dialogue began in this respect. These requests requested for the most part information in respect to the financial and accounting records of the BVI registered companies. The Ministry of Finance, who is the competent authority with delegated powers at the time to the Inland Revenue Department, was responsible for the collection and return of the requisite information to the French Competent Authority. Much work was done, but in many cases, some of the information requested was not provided. The French, on the other hand, passed a law on the 30th December 2009, whose goal was aimed at enhancing the cooperativeness of countries with France in their efforts to combat tax evasion and fraud. This law, in effect, provided that there are 3 reasons that could cause the French government to list a country as non-cooperative. 1, if a country was identified by the OECD as a non-cooperative jurisdiction, then France would view them as non-cooperative as well. 2, if France attempted to have a tax treaty with another jurisdiction, and for whatever reason that country refused to do so, then this country would be identified as non-cooperative. And 3, if a tax treaty was signed between France and another country, and for some reason in the practical implementation of the treaty, the level of cooperation was suboptimal, that country would be viewed as a non-cooperative jurisdiction. The BVI unfortunately fell short in the quality of information that was sent to the French authorities. This is why, as Minister of Finance, I requested a restructuring of the ministry so that it could be more aligned with international standards. As a result, these issues encountered with the French authority were corrected in the middle of 2013 with the establishment of the International Tax Authority. On our dialogue thus far with the French Competent Authority, they seem to be satisfied. The fact remains, though, that the BVI must endeavor to be recognized as what it truly is, and that is a truly cooperative treaty partner that engages its best efforts through properly exercised powers on its legal and regulatory regime. We have already engaged the French Ministry of Finance and the competent authority to determine the steps that must be taken to correct our shortfalls, and expect to be able to reverse the label of being non-cooperative territory in short order. Leading this territory is not about politics and games, rather it's about standards, principles, and values. Leading this territory is not about spreading doubt, but rather looking at the real picture and making the tough decisions, the right decisions. Together we'll continue to move this territory strategically forward so we can build a better British Virgin Islands and a legacy of success for generations to come. I thank you all, and I'll be glad to take your questions.
Premier, good afternoon. Zan Lewis, ZBV Radio. Premier went through what is currently being done to turn back basically what France said of the BVI, blacklisting BVI, and you outlined there were problems with the quality of information, I think that's what he said, and he made some restructuring in the ministry to avoid any further thing happening like this again. Could you elaborate more on that in terms of the quality of information and what you have done in the ministry?
When information is requested, there's various types of information that can be requested. And as observed, this had more to do with financials and whatnot. When that request comes, then the competent authority here in the BVI, which is the Ministry of Finance, has to do the research to identify, find information, and then transmit it. And depends on the kind of information that is requested. It may take more time than other time to provide that information. And what is happening at the provision of information was a bit overdue in some instances because of the time it takes to put it together. What we have done since then in 2013, we have established in the Ministry of Finance a unit called the International Tax Authority. And that unit now is responsible for receiving all requests for information to be shared and for providing that information.
What used to happen in the past before this unit was put in place, and where the information is to go? Who used to receive the information? And who heads this unit at the moment?
The information was received by the Ministry of Finance and processed by the Ministry of Finance and then forwarded. But now we have a specialized unit created just to deal with this matter.
Anyone heads this unit?
There are several people in the unit, including somebody who has a legal background and other person resource persons.
So who heads the unit?
The unit is headed by, I cannot tell you the name of the person at the moment because the person who was heading it has left and there's someone else there temporarily. So I cannot give you an actual head at this point in time.
Good afternoon, Honorable Premier. Gordon French, BVI Platinum. It seems if you're confident that France will remove the BVI from the blacklist. Have you gotten any indication so far from France that this will happen? You said it in the near future. Have you gotten any indication?
As I mentioned, the competent authority here in the BVI, that is the Financial Secretary, has been in conversation with the Ministry of Finance in France. And they have indicated that they're now satisfied with the data which is being provided by the British Virgin Islands.
And the unit you had set up, who was the previous head of that unit? Could you?
I will have to provide you with that information. Yeah.
Malika McPherson, the Island Sun newspaper. Mr. Premier, one of the problems that France highlighted was that some of the requests were simply not answered. Would the unit be looking to ensure that there are no backlog requests from other countries as well that were ignored to prevent such a blacklisting from happening again?
The setting up of the International Tax Authority was the answer to my government to be able to provide the information that was requested by various countries. This is a specialized unit headed by somebody, as I said, with a legal background. Her name actually right now, the person who is heading at the moment is Miss Crystalline Benjamin. Okay. Well, that's why that unit was set up, so that we could be more specific and provide information that is requested.
Honorable Premier Sean Rose, JTV News. Premier, is it safe to say that it was a lack of adequate institutional capacity that may have resulted in this lengthy submission of information to the French government? Is it that there wasn't a large enough number of people dealing with these matters?
If you recall, I said that the treaty was signed and came into force in 2010. So this was just the following year. Of course, there were still teeth and problems in getting everything together. But as I said earlier also, the information that is requested is varied, and some bits of information may take longer and more difficult to put together than others.
But isn't it unfair then to the BVI and small territories like the BVI for the French government to move in such haste, if I may say, to blacklist, given the fact that this treaty was more or less new? This new arrangement, was pretty much new.
We would think so, and I was, as I expressed last time, surprised that we were deemed a non-cooperating jurisdiction. But subsequent to that, our discussions with France have been quite amiable, and there's every indication that we will be able to come off this blacklist.
Premier, when the news came that BVI was blacklisted by France, and this body within the Ministry of Finance who were dealing with the issue at the time, it gave me the impression when the question was asked to you that you were unaware, basically, what was happening. You were not told of the negotiations or the problems that were going on between the French government and the Ministry of Finance. with this new unit, how will you be informed? Will you be ensuring that you are a part of the negotiations, part of the everyday happening, to ensure that it is done properly this time?
Thank you, Zan, but I cannot be a part of the everyday happenings and all the information sharing, but I can have a reporting function by the Financial Secretary, which I do have.
So you're getting a regular report on what's happening
Absolutely.
to correct the previous problem.
To continue to provide information that is accurate and timely.
Good afternoon. Ned Burntaff, BVI News. On a different matter. Premier, you mentioned plans to expand services in Hong Kong to include tourism product. Can you expound on that, please?
I think it is well established that the fact that China is one of the countries which is sort of up and coming and which is growing more millionaires in the world than any other country. Basically, there's a lot of growth. The economic growth of China is rapid. And it means that they have more disposable income and can travel, and they are traveling. And they're traveling not just to neighboring countries, but traveling further afield as well. And so we expect, and based on my discussions, that the BVI will be one of the destinations that they see as an interesting place to go to.
Mr. Premier, if you would allow me to move away from the topics you discussed at the podium. I have a question relating to crime, and this relates to your plans in the manifesto to have tougher gun laws. What has happened to that? Why is it taking so long to come? You're approaching your midterm in November. Why is it taking so long to happen?
That is being reviewed along with other measures to combat crime. As you know, one of the things that have been instituted recently is the use of CCTV cameras. This has been established as very important in the fight against crime in other countries, in London and other cities in the world. So we are looking at that, as well as the improved community policing where the community is engaged. And we're taking everything together and considering which we should put first to get the best result for the territory. But we are not ignoring the question of tougher gun laws. That is still in the works.
Premier Smith, Ron Henry with Virgin Islands News Online. You recently expressed disappointment, going back to the Hong Kong office, the setting up of that the focus was placed on the interim director, which is your wife, Mrs. Smith. Do you believe that criticisms saying that someone else perhaps should have been named in her place are perhaps unfair? Or could you say anything about how long the process might take in naming an actual director at this point?
Thank you. I've dealt with the question about whether the focus should have been on what was actually happening. That is the important event of opening an office in Hong Kong, and instead of focusing on an individual. But the reality is that Mrs. Smith was appointed about 3 months ago, back in May, to set up the office, and expects to be leaving there within the next several weeks. Haven't completed, by the time we have completed the assignment. In the meantime, we're having discussions with other qualified BVI landers, and one of whom it will be taking up the position.
Can you give an indication of if anyone is shortlisted or what the list looks like in terms of numbers at this
We
point?
are looking at about 3 persons. I won't be able to tell you who the persons are, but yes.
Okay.
Premier Smith, also moving away from the topics you discussed today. Yesterday's special court sitting really highlighted the BVI's role in the OECS. And I recall that in February, your office laid a report in the House that said that you're going to be assessing what sort of effects will come to the territory, given that it never fully signed on to the OECS's economic union. Has that assessment been done, and what has it found?
We have had discussions with the authorities in the OECS, And those discussions are continuing. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting a visit from the director of the office before the end of the year to continue those discussions. Yeah.
To follow up on that, the director did visit, I think it was last year, and she stressed that the BVI will not, as other OTs, will not be affected given its unique political position. Can you say what the hesitance is right now as it relates to actually signing on to the union?
We have to look at the pros and cons of signing on, what benefits the BVI would derive from signing on, and our continued relationships with the other territories in the OECS region, how we can assist with development of the region, how the region and us together can economically go forward. There are many issues which you need to look at. And then because there are things like duty arrangements and tax benefits and travel and so, all which has to be looked at very carefully before we can go forward.
Crystal Kanyak, BVI Beacon. Premier, you mentioned last time we were here that some officers from the FSC would also be stationed in the Asia office. Can you tell us what that staff is going to look like, how many people, and also what services they're going to be providing?
At this moment, I cannot tell you how many people, and they have not joined the offices yet, but they will be. I cannot give you an exact date, but they will be joining within the next several months. And their office basically is all about providing information. Because you see, the purpose of the office generally in Hong Kong is about marketing and trying to maintain the position of the BVI as a prime financial services jurisdiction. It's important because when you visit there, you'll realize that all the other countries, territories, who are also involved in financial services, are also established there, or competitors. And if you're not there, if you're not in the game, you're not in the game.
Just one follow-up to that. So is it fair to say that these FSC officers are going to be acting in more of an advisory capacity, or would people be able to come and say access the registry or pick up their certificates of good standing?
No, that's not the purpose. Yeah, no.
Two questions, Premier. You recently said that you've been in discussions with regional air carriers about issues related to airlift, and there's been a recent development with LIAT in particular, where the CEO has resigned, Mr. Burton. How do you view this resignation? Do you think it changes perhaps your discussions in any way? And second, the territory has been awaiting tourist arrival numbers from the development planning unit for some time, and these haven't been forthcoming. There was a report recently that stated the staff was undermanned perhaps, and this may have contributed to the lagging statistics. Would you be able to speak to that, and if there have been any approaches to getting new staff to join or anything to that effect?
First of all, I do not think that the change in the CEO of LIAT would have any effect on our relationship or our discussions. As a matter of fact, I know that there were some difficulties because of teething problems with the new airplanes and so, but I understand that those have been ironed out and services will improve. And as I said, that should have no bearing on our discussions with LIAT as far as providing services to BVI is concerned. As far as the provision of statistics and tourism, it is true that in many areas of statistics we have not in a position to be able to have all the statistics we need for all the functions we carry out. But we are working very hard to improve that. And right now, we are working on improving what we call e-government. And this is a drive which will ensure that the statistics are becoming more regularly and can be looked at more appropriately and be more useful.
Follow-up, could you give any indication of how soon that would be coming on stream, perhaps, the e-government
The government
initiative?
has already begun, and we are already seeing results, but it takes time to get all the various departments engaged and have all the necessary forms and whatnot. So it's a continual process.
Thank you.
Premier, as we continue to push tourism in the BVI, a senior person has resigned, the Deputy Director of Tourism. Why she resigned? That's Marcia Smith Hamilton. As Minister of Tourism, I believe you should know.
Yeah, Marcia Smith Hamilton has been a member of the Tourist Board for quite some time, and she performed invaluable service for us as a territory. My understanding that she's resigned for personal reasons.
We should be having a consultancy services because I think word is she might be working along with the government. If so, what is this consultancy service and what they'll be doing?
I cannot give you the details of that at the moment because that is being explored.
So it's a consultancy services and we'll be working along with government. That's correct.
She could provide consultancy services for government. And as I said, these are talks that are ongoing, which I cannot give details on.
Premier, you are the Minister of Tourism, but as you continue to push to develop tourism in the British Virgin Islands, which is one of the main incomes to Virgin Islands, we're not hearing much about tourism. We're not hearing anything about the tourist board. Anything on tourism, we're only hearing about from you, the Minister. It seems as though the tourist board is dormant. I think it's unfunctional. They have been traveling. We're not hearing anything. Could it be, and now that a senior person has resigned, are you satisfied, sir, with the functioning of the tourist board from the chairman down? Because we're not hearing anything about what they're doing as regards marketing the BVI.
But you're hearing from me, right?
You want to hear from the tourist board, sir, because I believe they have a job to do.
I think you're hearing from the competent authority. And the tourist board are doing their job. They've got their marketing initiatives both for the summer, which is completed, and now started their marketing initiative for the winter. They've, they're doing what they're supposed to do. For example, in the field of weddings, that's one area that's being pushed. Well, it's happening, and if you read some of the journals, which we take out advertisements, you'll notice that advertisements are there, and the promotions are going on.
Premier Smith, you mentioned in March that you, also on tourism, that you intended to start discussion again on the 5-star resort and golf course. Are you going to be starting these discussions soon?
We actually have engaged with the owners of the property, and those discussions are ongoing because we still see the area as important in the tourism development.
Mr. Premier, in the area of tourism too, we know you've been having some challenges with the ferry and you were having discussions and so on. Now, one proposal was to lease boats. Can you discuss what are the details? Who will leasing the boats from, and is the government going to be responsible for that, or will the ferry companies be paying for it? And another question too, on NHI. Will there be further public meetings? You did say in June that the public should listen for when these meetings should be held. Will there be further public meetings?
Okay, first of all, about ferries. No, the government is not hiring any ferries or boats at this point in time. And so there's no question about who would manage, so because we're not engaged in hiring at this point in time. The other question was about the NHI. There will be continued public meetings. As a matter of fact, there's been quite a lot of information being developed to share with the public, and I expect that these will begin very shortly.
Honorable Premier, you mentioned that several of the other overseas territories are also working on similar projects that your government has embarked on in the area of tourism, airport expansion and so forth. Any new developments regarding the expansion of the Beef Island Airport, Tbilisi Airport, and also the cruise ship there?
The development of the airport continues. If you recall, the Minister of Natural Resources did say that once the tender received, because of the cost, we needed to look again at the design of the airport expansion, which we are now in the process of doing. And soon we'll have a new design, and we'll be able to receive again input from people who are companies who are interested in doing the development.
Premier Smith, earlier in your administration, you announced some belt tightening measures. We're approaching budget season. What are the preliminary figures showing? Has it been effective, and how so?
I, at the moment, cannot give you figures. I'll have to have those with me to be able to make that kind of representation. But speaking from the point of view of the economy, I think that the measures that have been put in place have been helpful. And we're now looking forward to a new season, a new budget year. We'll be reviewing what has taken place. We are in the process of doing a review now. And we'll be reviewing what has taken place and deciding what new measures need to be put in place or what measures can be relaxed given what we'll find out.
Premier, if I could go back to the ferry issue. I know the Minister of Communications and Works had indicated that government will facilitate the process of leasing boats. So I don't know if you have changed your mind or you've looked at other alternatives.
We are looking at all the alternatives that are possible to provide a ferry service that is optimal for the British Virgin Islands. But as I said a few minutes ago, we are not hiring ferry boats here.
And I believe, so on the ferries, you will know about the deadline November 1st, when all the matter should have been dealt with. I believe that announcement was made. You know about that deadline, obviously.
And could you repeat that?
The deadline of November 1st, where all matters relating to the ferry operations will be dealt with. You know about that date?
Oh, yes.
By the Minister of Communication Works.
Yes, of course, yes.
It's unfortunate, sir, that we have to bring this question to you, as regards payment for persons who performed in festival, because we're not getting the answers elsewhere. So we think we need to go to the tourism minister, because festival tourism go hand in hand. What's happening? Why the people not being paid, the artists and so on? Why they're not being paid? Because we're not getting the word from the Festival and Affairs Committee chairman. Do you know what's happening, sir?
I can't give you a definite answer on that. What I can tell you is that the government pledged to give certain donations to the music festival, which the government did.
Not the music festival, sir. Festival and Affairs. The festival just completed. A lot of people. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. So they're not being paid, and we're not getting answers from the chairman. So unfortunately, we have to come to you. What's the problem?
For that matter, we'll have to have some discussions with the minister responsible for festival and fairs, that is the Minister of Education, and he'll be able to fill in with details. I cannot give you details of who is being paid and who is not being paid, because nobody has come to me and said I have not been paid. So unless that happens, I would not necessarily ask the question. But now that you've asked the question, I will have some discussion with the minister responsible.
And obviously that's a concern for you, not being paid.
Of course, yes.
Premier Smith, concerns have recently been floating about the economy and stimulating the economy and getting youths for young persons within the territory. Figures were recently released about the youth unemployment register, which indicated it was about 50% in terms of people being placed within jobs. Could you give your impression of that figure, or if you feel that it has been a successful initiative in terms of getting jobs for youths within the territory?
It has indeed been a successful venture because many of these young people would not have been employed had it not been, I think, in my opinion, for the register. And interestingly, in my meetings in Gibraltar, when we were discussing areas in which we could cooperate, that is an area that came up for discussion. And it's something also that other countries do, including Gibraltar. And we're able to share information on what they are doing, what we are doing, and perhaps we'll be able to make some adjustments to make our program more effective.
Okay, so you're saying in essence that more can and will be done to stimulate
Oh, yes.
jobs in terms of the. Are you looking at any particular areas at the moment that you can share?
As far as you mean the youth registration is concerned,
Yeah.
we will continue to work with the youth register because that essentially identifies the persons who are out of work. It also identifies the skills that that those persons have. So we'll be able to give suitable training to these persons to make them more employable. We'll also be able to have more discussions with potential employers, knowing what the skills are, to be able to place the young people more effectively. Okay? Well, thank you very much. So look forward to a further discussion in a few weeks. Thank you.